7 o'clock, Monday evening, January 22nd. I'll call the meeting of the Waverly City Council to order. Welcome to all the council people here and all of our guests. Adam, glad to see you back. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Bergen.
Here.
Drenkow.
Here.
Angus.
Here.
McKenzie.
Here.
Rafi. Here. Scherer.
Present.
Waldstein. Here.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to that effect.
I move that the agenda, approve the agenda as presented.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item is the approval of the minutes for the January 8th, 2018 regular meeting. Entertain a motion, please.
I will move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is public comments for any item that's not on the agenda. Anyone in the audience have something that they'd like to bring up that we need to know about? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item of the study session, an update to the council from the W.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
So I just want to bring everybody up to date on a little bit about what the W is doing right now. We do have a contract still with the city, even though there is no financial obligation any longer. So we still have some commitments that we are still trying to live up to, and I'm just going to give you an brief update, hopefully, on what we have going on.
Would you please state your name?
Oh,
for us,
sorry,
please?
Sheila Kittleson. Sorry about that.
No problems.
So the first thing on our list is provide wellness, fitness, and recreation programs that benefit the city and the college. That's one of our commitments. And the first thing I have on the list is a new program that we started in January, and it's called Delay the Disease. We're very excited about this program. It's specifically for Parkinson's, people who have Parkinson's disease, and it's an exercise program for that specific segment of population that we hope will help alleviate some of their symptoms and help them moving forward. So that started in January. We're just getting it kicked off, so it's not highly attended yet, but we hope to grow that class. We also have a Compass class going on right now, and that's a 5-week educational course. We partner with Waverly Health Center on that, and one of the dietitians, not local, but she comes and we do like a 5-week session Tuesday nights where we incorporate some physical education as well as just other wellness type activities, including the last time going to the Hy-Vee store and looking at labels, learning to read labels. So that's one of our programs going on right now. In May, we will be hosting our 7th annual early season sprint triathlon. We typically have over 200 participants in this triathlon, and very few of those people come from Waverly. We have a lot of surrounding communities, but we also have a lot of people who come from other states to our town to participate in this triathlon. So that's year number 7. Class participation, again, we just like to remind people that even though you're not a member, if you're not a member of the W, we encourage everybody to come and participate in our classes. The first class is free, and if you'd like to join, there is a fee for that, a monthly fee for that. So even non-members, we'd like to have people come in and take our classes. Unified Sports Day, we've been doing this for a number of years, and this is where we have some challenged individuals that come in for a day of competition in a lot of different sporting events, and that's coming up in February. We also have a lot of camps, and we've talked about this before. We have high school track meets, and we have a lot of camps throughout the summer months. We bring in over 8,000 people, young people, to our facility to participate in those. And along with those 8,000 people plus, we also have parents, families that travel with them. And we hope that while they're in town, they spend money at our local businesses and support our local merchants here in town. And then the other thing that I'd like to point in this particular area is that 25% of the members at the W are not Waverly addresses. And so we feel like with those individuals coming to town to come to the W for their exercise, we also feel like they are participating or at least, helping out our merchants and buying things in our town as well. I expect everybody to be able to read this. Even I can't read this. Really what I was just trying to demonstrate here is that we have a large variety of classes. There are over 20 classes a day that we offer at the W. So with one of those, we hope that we can meet everybody's needs throughout the day. Typically about 20 on Mondays, 17, 18 on Tuesdays, and that's not actually our full class list, but that it's a good starting point for most people. And I just threw in a few pictures this year just to show some of the people that are actually in some of these classes. Kickboxing is very popular. I think there's about 20 people in that class right now. We have our 8 a.m. senior body toning class, and if you would have been in the building about 3 years ago, you would have noticed this class size to be about maybe a tenth of that. And we have a great instructor right now, and that number has really grown over time. So that's actually a light class on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Yoga classes, fitness classes, just general classes in our aerobic studio continue to be popular. This is just a snapshot of one of our camps this last summer, and it shows people that actually come and spectate. They're on the upper level watching the camps going on. This is a picture of our triathlon, the start of our triathlon, and for those of you who have ever been in the building at the start of it, it's pretty incredible to see that many swimmers around our pool ready to get in the pool. And even with over 200 people participating, we can get everybody in and out of that pool in less than an hour. Another snapshot of the triathlon. This is actually one of the transition areas outside the football stadium, and that's where all the bikes are located. Mike Cherry's bike is probably there. Mm-hmm. This is one of our bikers coming down Fifth Avenue. This is one of the runners coming down Fifth as well. We do 3 laps around Wartburg College, and they come down Fifth Avenue. But one of the things that people appreciate about this triathlon is how well maintained our streets are and how safe our police department and our Bremer County Sheriff's Department make them feel out on the course. So the next commitment is that the membership be open to the general public. A few numbers for you. The average daily member check-in just for this month alone has been 591, with a single-day high of 892. We have total members check-in last year of 153,898. And I thought because we've been in business we've been in operation for 10 years, to pull that number of how many people have checked into the building over those last 10 years. It was over 1,000,004. And the total current members are at 3,085, and that's actually the highest number we've had since we've opened.
So Sheila, when you say back to that slide you just had, when you're talking about 1 million, you're talking about the same people checking in many times.
Could be.
Yeah. In some
Yes,
cases.
that is very possible. But on a daily, yes, even that 591, that's an average, and yeah, there are multiple check-ins that make up that average. So, membership numbers, I just gave a snapshot of the 10 years that we've had, the history behind us, including 16, 17 years, and you can see that over the years that those numbers have continued to grow. And this year, again, we've reached our member high in January. The membership information, we have a mix. A little bit of a change from last year, and I'd say that's because our senior population continues to grow in the building, and that number has increased over time. The rates, I would also like to point out, we haven't changed those in 10 years. That's something we've worked very hard to not have to change. No guarantees that that's going to be able to continue going forward, but for now, we've been able to maintain those rates. All members enjoy similar hours of operation, maintain reasonable hours of operation, and those were 2 things that were very important when the agreement was put together. So we started opening the facility with 103 hours to start, and we decided that we needed to extend the lap time, especially at noon. For lap swimmers, we extended those hours. We also extended Wednesday afternoons when we have young people in the building, and sometimes there's limited space with track going on in the winter months, so we open the pool earlier for that that segment. We also added a weekly, or a monthly, I guess I should say, swim hour for Fun Zone, and that is specifically for 5 years and under, and their parents to be able to come in and swim once a month on Friday morning. We've expanded even the 103 hours to be 106, and that was at the request of a lot of early morning people that wanted to be in working out before 5:30. So we started opening the building at 5. And currently, as it's always been, the Wartburg students utilize this facility just the same number of hours that anybody else is in the building. They don't have special hours, so everybody has same hours. And we continue to provide childcare for those individuals who need that to come in and be able to work out. We're open daily except for major holidays. We continue that tradition. We are only closed 6 days out of the year, with the exception of 2017. This is the first year in 10 years that Christmas Eve has fallen on a Sunday, and so we decided to close on Sunday as well this year, so we were closed 7 days this year, or last year, I guess I should say. We are open Memorial Day and Labor Day, and so we're open even on some of those days that some other locations might be closed. And the other thing, I put in here upper level walking area map for distance to accommodate members when necessary. And the reason I threw that in there is because part of the concern when we opened the facility was that there would be some shutdowns of the entire building or the facility when we had athletic events, so specifically maybe track meets to shut down the field house. So some of the things that we've done to accommodate that or try to alleviate some of the stress of that is we've mapped off the upper level so that if you want to come in and walk and the track is closed, you can still come in and walk and you know the distance that you're walking. We become very, very creative as we get busier through the season as to where we can find space for everybody in the building. January, February are clearly our busiest months, and even tonight we just started softball, baseball. A lot of the spring sports are starting to be in there. One of the things we've worked very hard on is trying to maintain some time on that track, which seems to be one of the biggest areas that people like to use this time of day. So we've worked very hard to maintain that track being opened even when we do add in our athletic spring sports. Offer general and public indoor and outdoor recreation activities and programming. We continue to offer our walk and talk program, and that's a very low cost. We haven't raised that price. That is a very popular activity in the mornings. Classes offered at the outdoor pool during the summer months, and if there's bad weather, we do bring those into our indoor facility. Swim club, we offer a fall and a winter program for those individuals or young people who want to continue their strokes, continue working on their strokes rather than just in the summer. Fun Zone for youth, we offer that October through March, and that is for the very young people in our community, 5 and under primarily. We have a bouncy house and some big wheels out there and some balls Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a couple of hours at a very low cost. We continue to offer the Community Wellness Fair, and it's in its 11th year this year. Certification courses offered year-round, and we have a lot of non-Waverly people coming and utilizing that service. I think we've had groups from Green, we've had large segments of population just come in, and Heather does a nice job with getting a whole staff certified so they're ready to go for the summer. We provide outdoor or indoor space for police officers occasionally, training and testing, and we're happy to do that. Open court space for some of our WSR teams during the winter months. I know when the band was going to Florida, we had them come in and do some marching on the track just to get ready for that. Training space for our Special Olympic athletes. We do offer some space for them as they're trying to get ready for their basketball for the Unified Sports Day. We have a team that comes in and practices now. We host many youth groups throughout the year. Pool parties are available for anybody who would like to come in and utilize that space. We have after prom venues. We've had one group that's been with us for 10 years, and they'll be back again this year. And we provide space for the Waverly Area Swim Club. That's kind of new. Actually, this last year may have been the first year we did that, and that's for some of the younger kids when they have to be out in the outdoor pool. It's kind of cool out there for them. We've allowed them to come in and utilize our pool where it's a little bit warmer for them until it gets warmer outside. Indoor tennis and pickleball. Pickleball is becoming quite popular with a large segment of population, and it's fun to see everybody in. Specialty classes are offered throughout the year. DARE programs continue to come in and utilize the facility. We have the local wellness days for a lot of communities, a lot of schools around the area. We host, we have a Wartburg group that has what we call the Sparkles group that comes in, and that's a group of special needs individuals who learn some cheerleading skills, and then they get to perform at some of our athletic events, basketball games, and I think they were even at a football game this year. And guest passes, of course, non-members, anybody can come in and buy a guest pass for the day. And we had over 8,000 last year, and a total for the last 10 years of over 79,000. And of course, that doesn't include, that's one of the items that we a lot of times will give away for raffles, so that wouldn't include that number. Sunday afternoon, I was in the building, just happened to walk out to the pool and just see how well it was utilized. We probably had close to 100 people in the pool on Sunday for some reason, so that was just a quick snapshot of Sunday afternoon in the pool. Fun Zone Friday, these are a couple of our young people who utilize this fun activity, and this is what our wet classroom can look like for some people who really want to put some effort into their birthday party celebrations. Walk and talk, folks. And then the last thing that I have is the recreational programs that we offer, and we had agreed, or we said that we would at least offer what was offered before, and hopefully we could expand those. We now have swimming lessons, clearly that can be year-round. We reach over 800 youth, and we have many of the programs, original programs are still there, and we have expanded on some of those. And some of the programs that we've added include rock climbing, Football 101, we've had jump rope, pickleball for young people, and actually we have now a league for adults, which will be starting next week. Pee-wee karate, cheerleading, basic racket sports. We have a Wartburg Sports for Shorts where we have the Wartburg coaches, head coaches a lot of times, will come in as guests for one Saturday and provide demonstrations on their sports, so to speak. We have MMA training, doubles, sand volleyball, and a winter golf clinic that we hope boosts interest in that sport. And coming this summer, we're going to offer lacrosse, which will be new I think for most people in the community. We're going to try an adult soccer league and disc golf. And over the last 10 years, we've had very conservatively over 7,500 participants in those programs. That is it. So anybody
Okay,
have
very
any
good,
questions?
Sheila. Thank you for an excellent report.
right.
Any questions from the council?
Sheila,
I've got one question. And I've heard the term pickleball a lot, and I'm not necessarily a sports aficionado, but I see that, and Tab might know a little bit more about this than I do, that in Cedar Falls is looking at building a pickleball court in one of their parks. Can you give me just a really brief explanation of what pickleball is and where do they play it over at
Sure.
the W?
We have 2 courts set up on our center court, so it's not the length, it's sideways. And I haven't played it before, but it's supposedly if you are good at table tennis, ping pong, you'll be a really good pickleball player. It looks a little bit like tennis, but the wrist action is more like the ping pong table.
So you hit the ball with your hand or
Nope, it's
with
a
the
racket.
paddle?
It's a mallet. It's
Mallet.
about this big, and the net's shorter and not as long. And there's like a kitchen area where serve has to not go in.
Okay, well, you don't have to go in.
I would say I've seen people play it. I haven't played it myself. It's like tennis, only the ball is almost like a wiffle ball in that it moves slowly.
Okay, so
So you
someone
can-
uncoordinated like
Moves
me would
fast
be able
and-
to play it.
Yeah, you
Yes,
can,
absolutely.
but there's a lot more people putting spin on the ball, so it's not just run fast to it. So
All right, thank you.
And it's really intended for people who like the tennis or the other sports that you don't have to move real fast and you still be a very effective player. Come try it out someday. Any other
Sheila,
questions?
back when the partnership was proposed between Wartburg and Waverly, to have the W, there was some concern voiced that community people wouldn't have a chance at equipment because the Wartburg students would be monopolizing it. What have you seen over 10 years?
I would say that 3 years ago was still a bit of a challenge. I would say today We don't have that between, it used to be about 5 o'clock in the afternoon when we'd have some of our teams in there, cross-country to be specific. And we have now, have bikes for that segment in the field house, so that majority of those people are out there. If they come in, we ask them to come in between 3:30 and 4, so they're in and out before the general population will be getting off work to come in and work out. So we have less complaints about that, and I think it's been a conscious effort by our coaches to actually make that happen.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the council? Hearing none, thank you.
Gotta say, I'm a big fan of having the W in town. So I think
yeah.
you're doing a great job.
We're lucky to have it.
Thank you again, Sheila, for your report. Item number 2, Champions Ridge update.
Well, good evening, and my name is Terry Henricks, and I own a company by the name of General Development Group based in Nashua. And I'd like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come and update you tonight with the progress that has been made and some of the ups and downs that we've had in 2017 with Champions Ridge. I apologize, Chairman Fred could not be here tonight. I thought he was going to be back, and he's not, so I will be speaking on behalf of the Champions Ridge Board and the work done by our company, the General Development Group. There are several representatives present with me tonight, and from both the Ball Group and the Fair Board, if you have any questions, and we'll open it up for questions, I think, at the end of my presentation. It's fairly short. A lot's happened over the last year. Champions Ridge is a project like none other that has been proposed in Bremer County and the surrounding area. Likewise, the capital campaign for this project is like none other that I've been a part of for 25 years. I realized that our mandate from the City Council last year was twofold. One, that we start construction in 2018, and secondly, that we raise at least $1 million by the end of 2017. Last winter, I gave the council our campaign fundraising plan. As I have said in the past, fundraising is a process, not an event. The first step in the process is identifying, then cultivating, and finally soliciting your lead gift prospects that have been identified. As in any capital campaign, approximately 80 to 90% of that money that you raise will come from 10% to 20% of your prospects. In a capital campaign of this size and scope, our capital campaign cabinet identified approximately 40 lead gift prospects. Based on a gift range chart that I create for every campaign, I figured that it would take a minimum of 9 gifts, ranging from a $1 million gift to several $250,000 gifts. All 40 of the identified lead gift prospects have been contacted. They have been asked to participate. Several of them, many of them, have been asked 3 times. And all have said that they think this is a wonderful project, but no one has stepped up to the plate to take the lead. Thus, we have been stuck in this lead gift phase of the campaign for the whole year. Our capital campaign cabinet has identified over 500 additional prospects that we will be contacting. I want to say that right now. A lot of people have said, well, nobody's come to see me yet. When we get to that part of the process, we will be there. But we've identified over 500 additional prospects that we'll be contacting as we move through the various gift levels of this campaign. Of the 40 lead gift prospects that we've identified and asked, the high ask, I always give them 3 different levels that if they would consider. Taking all 40 and considering the ask to all 40, that total equals over $8 million. On the low side, which would be the lowest amount that I put down for them to consider, the total would be about $3 million, which is still about half of the campaign goal. And today, and I want to tell you that as of today, and I know you've all seen me out and about, and I've been all over this county many, many times, but we've raised $426,000. I'm presently in discussion with 4 entities, which are lead gift prospects that we identified this fall. The one thing that has kept them from making a decision, I will have to say, in 2017, happened to be the new Federal Income Tax Reform Act. And as the federal government didn't vote to put it into place and explain the details until later in 2017, they didn't act. I have had conversation with these parties this year, but no decision has been made or rendered as of today. Our new campaign materials were developed in 2017. Our fundraising plan in detail. Our capital campaign goal was set at approximately $8 million. This is the total cost of Champions Ridge, which includes land acquisition from Neil Smith. It includes the construction plan and development costs from our construction engineer, which was quite lengthy. It includes the cost to develop both the fairgrounds and the Waverly Shell Rock baseball softball complex. To date, with the city's involvement and what we have raised, approximately $1.5 million has been invested in Champions Ridge. I have had several other conversations throughout the year. I've had conversations multiple times with Vision Iowa. Our project fits their guidelines perfectly. Both the City of Waverly and the Board of Supervisors now have financially supported the project, which is a prerequisite. I know that, and I'll get to this with the supervisors, they voted several weeks ago. I don't know if that transaction has taken place, but the city has, and they have committed to. The state legislature has capped the maximum award now for any Vision Iowa grant, they told me, which was capped at $1 million. And that will be the amount that we'll be asking and that we would qualify for. We'll not be able to make application until we reach about half of our goal amount. If we can raise the money necessary that we have been working on, we could be potentially awarded $1 million by Vision Iowa. I don't think there's anybody in this room that wouldn't invest $4 million to get $1 million return. Another development in 2017 is the potential endorsement. Excuse me, I got my pages mixed up here. I have also had several other obstacles that I've been challenged with throughout the year, which came up multiple times. And I want to address just 3 of those. But I want to tell you that there's been action here. This not only because we run the campaign tandem with the prospects can give to either the ball or the fair, or they can split it half and half, or they can put it all here or all there. They have the say of where they want to direct their dollars. The question has come up continually all year long about the Fair Association, and there's no way that they can afford to pay for their 40 acres of land. Now that is an object. What I'm saying is this: when I'm talking to people, it becomes a negative for the whole thing right away. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you, and anybody that's listening out in the general public, that 2 weeks ago, the Bremer County Supervisors voted unanimously to release the final payment on their behalf out of this year's fiscal county budget. And I want to say that that was approved unanimously. And it will be matched by the City of Waverly, which will be the final transaction. The Bremer County Fair Association at that time will have their 40 acres paid in full. I want to say that. I got the bully pulpit here, so I want to get that out there. As agreed in 2014, the City of Waverly financed the property purchase with the Fair Board. They agreed to do it over a 4-year period of time. I think that's important because I don't think a lot of people realize that. At 0% interest. The purchase price was $443,850. The Fair Board paid their $203,850 in the first 3 years. The Board of Supervisors now have cleared to pay their full $120,000, which the City of Waverly has already agreed to in the arrangement that they had made. I think that I possibly may have just addressed one of the obstacles, but it didn't take place until right before the first of the year, before we knew we had to come and present to you. But that's a big deal. Another concern by prospects has been the fact and the question that whether each one of these entities will be able to sustain themselves and how they're going to maintain their facilities adequately. Now, I think that's a good question, but the answer is yes. As you have heard me talk, the fair now has paid off their land loan in 3 years, and they have a budget to maintain their fairgrounds. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but they have a year-round, basically, business with their bleachers and everything else, the stage, everything that they do, which generates approximately $50,000 to $60,000 of income to the fair besides the fair. And then once the Ball Association moves to their complex, and they will have control of more of the concessions that will be out there, that will greatly affect their bottom line. With this complex and the tournaments that could be held there, I know in Waterloo, they said that their income that they, just off of the area that they have, which wouldn't be this size and probably host as many tournaments, their income was over $67,000. So this past year, the Ball Association made a $100,000 pledge to Champions Ridge out of the income that they already had, and that income was fully comprised of registration income and what concession income they get now. I don't think that should be an issue with anybody. They will be able to maintain their portion of it, so will the fair. The last obstacle I wanted to mention was something that I get asked every once in a while, but I don't know where some of this stuff comes from consistently. I know it's a city and a community, everybody talks, but can we raise the money to do Champions Ridge? And I have never had this brought up as many times as I have. There's never a guarantee in anything that we do. If you start a new business, never a guarantee you're going to be okay. But I can't work miracles, but there's never a guarantee unless leaders of a community and leaders in this county are willing to step up to the plate, and help make it happen. Those are the people that I've been out to basically the majority of the 40 of them, several of them like twice and 3 times. It's very frustrating. I ask anybody here and listening tonight to name a project in this area that will out-benefit the number of children and young adults that Champions Ridge will benefit. Over 600 youth are involved in 4-H and FFA programs in Bremer County, and there are over 1,200 youth and young adults involved in the Waverly Shell Rock baseball softball program, and over 1,800 young adults and young children will benefit from Champions Ridge immediately. This last fall, just a couple things that have happened. Last fall, representatives of Champions Ridge, the Bremer County Fair Association, the WSR Baseball Softball Group, the City of Waverly, the DNR, Bremer County NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Iowa Department of Agriculture came together to see what we could do to help with the water quality situation where Champions Ridge sits, as it is adjacent to one of the city's wells that sits up on the hill. From that, and from the excitement that came out of this with the people from the DNR and the NRCS and from the Department of Agriculture, we have put together a plan which we hope to get part of it funded. It might not be in this year, it may be next year, but we've already started the process because a lot of the work that we're doing, we've got to pay for anyway, and this may pay for some of it, is to make that whole area a demonstration education area that will serve as a site to educate the general public. But we can also honor Neil Smith for his contribution to the project and what he did to enhance conservation efforts throughout his life here in Waverly and throughout the state. Thus, the Neil Smith Demonstration Conservation Area has been introduced into our development project, which has the potential to not cost us any more money, but maybe bring some in. Another development in late 2017 was a meeting that several of us had, and this is with the Build Your Ballpark group in Waterloo. I don't know if any of you know Bob Hellman, but we've gotten to know him quite well. Bob Hellman and his board members have met with us several times. I don't think there's going to be any type of financial commitment there, but they are looking very strongly right now. We're going to finalize things in the very near future to have them endorse Champions Ridge and the baseball softball complex, as well as help market the project and as well as help consult our contractors with all their vast experience with the development of it. And their input, their experience will be priceless. We should be putting that together hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Another development was, another thing that happened this fall was that our group, the Champions Ridge Group, personally contacted over 80 contractors in Bremer County, every single contractor. Building, electrical, plumbing, right down to excavating. We had let's see. All interested excavating contractors were invited to attend a reception that we had. It was hosted out at the center. The Miller family hosted that. And to discuss their potential role in the project. We finally have our final construction documents delivered to us, and they were delivered to us by our construction engineer at the end of last week. And we hoped to have, I had hoped to have a finalized deal with one of these prospects, our lead gift prospects, by the end of 2017. You don't know how hard I've worked on trying to get some of this put together, but it didn't happen. So we're at the point where we had planned to ask these contractors to bid on the excavation. There's no way that we can do that. No way that I ever advise we do that without having the dollars put together to do it. Once the excavation is underway, we plan to invite the other 60 contractors that aren't excavators to come to another reception, and we will focus on all of the other work that's needed. But one of our main things is, by doing this ourselves and not having a general contractor, Dennis Happel has agreed to oversee the excavation part of it as a voluntary effort, and is to keep all of the contractors as local as we possibly can. So in closing, I just want to say that, on behalf of the group here, that over 10 years ago, a group of citizens known as the Fair Diamond Development Committee were tasked by the council to come up with a plan to incorporate a new fairgrounds and relocated baseball diamonds into one project that would meet the basic needs of both of the groups, and it would save money by sharing some of the costs at the same time. Although there were many bumps along the road that stalled the project, for months on end, the group continued to push ahead. And they pushed ahead on the desperate desire of residents that wanted it done. With the addition of the final piece in the spring of 2017, then the engineering work was able to be completed, and as I said, delivered just last week. The Champions Ridge Board completed this task that was given to it by the city, has raised enough money to date to remain debt-free. This group has a new name, has a lot of new faces. They continue to be passionate about improving the quality of life in the area, as well as doing all they can do to increase the economic benefit of this project to the area. As you know, the one remaining hurdle that I mentioned are the lead gifts. Somebody out there has the ability and the desire to help make this project a reality. But to date, we've either not convinced them, or maybe we haven't even identified who they are. Maybe they're watching TV right now, and they'll read this, or they'll read this in a news story that will be in the Waverly newspaper or other area newspapers about tonight's meeting. Maybe they'll be inspired by the fact that 1,800 plus youth will benefit from Champions Ridge. And maybe it'll be that they will leave a legacy that will be left for Bremer County and Waverly Shell Rock for the next 50 years, 100 years, 200 years. Whatever or however it happens, it has to happen. It has to happen quickly. We understand that. Now, to sweeten the pot, I just added this before I came in here. I'll even buy lunch personally for whoever wants to do that, and I'll meet them wherever, and I'll buy them whatever they want to eat. But I'm just putting it out where we're at right now. We knew the rules. We knew the rules when we set them up a year ago. Because we haven't reached our mandated dollar amount by the end of 2017, I guess it is now up to you to determine if Champions Ridge should move ahead with our fundraising plan or with our development, or should it be shut down? We appreciate the council's time and we'll await your decision on which way you want to go with the project. Again, I'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for allowing us the opportunity to address the council tonight. And I want to say that on behalf of everybody involved with this incredible project. And if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them right now of any of our board members that are here tonight. And again, I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Time for questions from the council. Comments?
I have a question, I guess. So Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you said the main obstacles to fundraising that you identified were a question of whether the Fair Association
One of the obstacles.
could
You wanna
purchase
back
their
up a
land.
little?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, one of the questions was, and it's come up over and over again, is people didn't feel that there's no way the fair can pay for that.
Okay. And another
And-
one was whether the entities could sustain themselves and
Right.
maintain the properties. So if you do create the ballparks, the campground, et cetera, who is going to staff the campgrounds? Who's going to maintain the grounds when it's not softball, baseball season?
Well, that's something that will have to be addressed then, and that's a very good question. We hope that, I know there that was mentioned that maybe the city and the county conservation could work on it, maybe do something together in the future. But it would probably be county conservation that would take care and maintain that, would be my understanding. They would be in essence, when we first talked to them, I mean, it was a case where they would buy the land from the city. I don't know, there's been discussion about maybe the city participating with it, so the city would own part of it and they'd be partners in it. But I would think that portion of it they'd pay for out of their own income.
Be clear, you're talking just the campground,
Yeah.
those comments.
Just the campground. That's all you were talking about, wasn't it?
Well, I'm talking about the whole thing, but,
Oh, I thought you were talking just about the campground.
Well,
I'm
that
sorry.
too.
Go ahead.
Greg Miller, president of the Champions Ridge Board. The Champions Ridge Committee has already worked with the city and put together a development and usage agreement about maintaining the grounds. And the fair would be in charge of maintaining their facilities, and the ball would be maintaining their facilities, everything from mowing grass to trash and that kind of thing. The city parks that would be in that, there was development plans for a structural park. Those grounds were going to be taken care of by the city, as far as mowing and that kind of thing.
and have you heard any questions from people about the site itself? Has that been an obstacle?
It was when I first started, until I rewrote the materials and I paid homage to a person that I knew, whose name was Neil Smith. There was a great number of people out in the county that didn't know why this site was selected out here. And because I don't blame them. It's on the other side of Waverly, about a mile and a half further than right now. But from my understanding, what Neil did, by selling it for less than its market value, that was his way of trying to do something to not only take care of his heirs, but to also do something that might be developed for youth and young people, or young families. And that hasn't been as much of a question now, but I've spent this whole year talking to people and you've got to educate them, and you got to get them educated, so, yeah. Thank you. That's a good question.
Couple comments, I guess. Again, I know the hard work that's gone into this project from day one,
Yep.
and I continue to compliment the folks that continue to work on it, and thankfully, this is the first time you've come back to us without a new ask of the city. So I think we're fully invested at this time.
We fully understand the rules of the game,
Yeah,
so. yeah.
so, you know, it's certainly going to take more conversation with the council, but myself, I don't know that I would vote at this time to pull the plug, tell you to stop doing what you're doing. I think as we go through strategic planning, we'll just have to start looking at what are some of the other options if in a relatively short time that those donors don't start signing on the dotted line. Because again, the city has invested a great deal of public money in this.
And we understand.
The public, something for that.
Yeah.
My hope is that the project will go forward and we'll be able to provide those recreational opportunities for the public. But
Right.
I think as we go through strategic planning, we owe it to ourselves, I guess, to talk about it and those type of things.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, I just had, I'm sure it's a relatively small question, and then another one. But on the expenses that the city will absorb for maintenance of the portion that was in the agreement that Greg mentioned, what kind of dollars are we talking about there?
It would be similar to a neighborhood park where there'd be a piece of play equipment, maybe a shelter or something like that in the vicinity of the ball diamond area. It'd be similar to most large ball complexes where they have a children's area, you might say. I've not figured out how much dollars it is, but I would guess it would be put on our mowing route, our playground inspection route, and our garbage and routine route, that sort of thing. So it'd be part of the daily practice.
Thanks.
Edith, real quick, one of the things I'd like to mention is that, and we have to finalize all this, but by working with the DNR and all these groups about this being in a demonstration education area for water quality, we've taken a large portion of that area and put it back into wild prairie, grass, so we don't have to mow it. But that also filters the water and cleanses the water as it moves into the groundwater. And so, you know, we'll have the ability to have an adequate parks or whatever, but I think our understanding is that whatever doesn't need to be mowed, we're gonna make sure it doesn't have to be really maintained either, kind of like you have out at CUNA. And kind of run those together a little bit, yeah.
Then I had a question for you, Terry, too, about Bob Hellman. I mean, what you described as, you know, what he would be willing to help with in terms of planning and marketing, and I mean, that's certainly obvious that he's done a lot of this and has been quite successful. But would we pay him? Would you pay him
No.
for those services then?
Those services would be, my understanding, I told him right from the start, because I know financially, my whole motive wasn't, Travis and I visited with him personally. Farmers State Bank got us together with him. And after we met, I went down there several times and met with him by myself and then some of their board members. I said, I am not asking you right now for any money. That's not it at all. But can we partner together this is a concept with these three diamonds, these three quads that he has never, they've worked on tons of diamonds, but this quad thing is really unique. And they have a lot of insight and input in for how to, you know, creating diamonds and what to do. And he said, hey, if we could work together, be partners in this, I'll help you and you help me. And if we can scratch each other's backs and we can get their endorsement, which I know we'll be able to, he's one fine fella. And I don't think that'll be an issue. And no, it's not about the money.
And the same with Dennis Happel serving as the
Same
general
with
contractor?
Dennis, yes. Yes.
Terry, it's obviously disappointing that you've put in a lot of effort to work with potential lead gifts lead givers and not gotten the response that you want. Can you summarize for us, what are they saying when they say no? What's holding them back, do you think?
I don't know. I don't think I better say why I think it's happening, but because that's just my deep down opinion. But I will say this. I have heard not so much from those people. They all think it's a great idea, but then when I go back, no, we're not gonna. They're all waiting for somebody else to do something, and I just can't get one of them to pop. Of the 4 people that I'm talking to right now, 3 of them have had no exposure to what's gone on in the past. You know, a lot of work's been done, but I think to a degree, maybe by some of the local people in the county, it's been some little bit stereotyped. I've also heard from several people here in town that why should we give to something that if it doesn't make it, the city's going to pay for it anyway? Well, that's not, no, it's not. They bought the land. We have to provide provide that. And so it's been an education process. Those maybe are a couple of the things, yeah. And then what I said about that I had another opinion about, really, it isn't probably as important as that. But a lot of people talk, and it's almost like when you get into these league, a lot of the league give prospects know how campaigns work. Campaigns, when I first started this business 25 years ago, hadn't even been hardly heard of. So I was out doing education. Well, now everybody's educated. And there are probably some that know that if they don't help out in the lead gift phase of this, it's not going to go anywhere. Because of the fact that 80 to 90% of your money comes from 10 to 20% of your people. Every campaign I have ever run has been just like that. 80 to 90% of the money comes from 10 to 20% of the prospects. This is going to take a lot of prospects. I figured, or a lot of donors, I figured it would take probably 400 to 500. An average campaign is 2 to 3. So I figured it would take 400 to 500 donors because a lot of them would be loaded on the back end, which I call our special gift phase. But the whole success of that depends on what you can put together first. And what you don't put together now, I've had people, like I said, how come you haven't been to see me? Well, if we start going out now and asking for $10,000, $5,000 gifts, we're never going to get to $8 million. We're not going to get there. I have got to keep working on this first phase. And once that happens, everything will fall into place. So, education, maybe a little stereotyped. We just ran out of time, but we're asking for a little more.
So there haven't been any lead givers step forward. Have you had anyone say, we just think it's not a good idea?
Truthfully, I think I had 2 people out at the fair that talked to me that said they thought it was a bad idea. But first of all, they didn't know anything about it. They thought the city was paying for it. And my tax money, I'll be damned if my tax money, now the city bought the land. Fair Board's paying them back. It's an investment. But they didn't realize that the bulk of the money is being raised privately. If there is, there was less than 5. Yep.
Any other?
So you said you've got, what, 426,000 raised so far?
426,000 has been raised since they started a couple of years ago, plus what I've done this year.
So how much have you raised in the past year?
Approximately 150,000 probably.
115 last year. Now you said that there's 100,000 that was committed by the Ballpark Association?
No, by the Ball Association.
By the Ball Association?
Yes.
Okay, is that included in that 426,000?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And are all of is all of the 426,000 meet the definition of cash or, I forget the
Well, it's
wording.
pledges in cash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not in kind.
No, none of it's in kind. Mm-mm. No.
And is all that towards the baseball?
Half and half.
What percentage would be to the fair and what percentage would be?
Probably half and half, yeah. Although it's going to probably take more money to complete the fair project than it is potentially the diamonds. I'm just looking at long range, but I'm not exactly, we just got the information back from what they kind of thought on just the excavating. I'm not even sure about what the estimates are on the rest of it, but I know I've gotten general estimates so we can put together our campaign goal, but not specific. No.
No, I have to say, I have concerns about starting the excavating before you've got most of your money raised or at least pledged.
So do I. That's what I said. We can't start it unless we got the money in place. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We're ready. We're ready to start. If the one prospect would have come through that I had talked to before the end of the year, we'd have been over the $1 million threshold, and we could have started. Yep. But that didn't happen. And all I can do is be honest about it and just say, here we are.
So let me clarify that. So your goal is $8 million?
Yep.
And you would start excavating if you'd raised 1 million?
Yeah, because the,
What about the other 7 million?
well, that's buildings, fencing, tiling, sod. I mean, a large portion of it, when you divide it up, first of all, we'll need to get a bid from these people, but we're not gonna ask them to make a bid unless the money's in place. And so we have an estimate, we have an idea of what it's gonna cost. But then when you get theirs back, we're looking at, if we could raise the $1 million, that there's more than likely with some of the comments that have been made by some of the people that they may do some of it in kind, that it might cover that. But we won't know until we can ask and find out. And I just say what they've told me, that when you do the bid process, you do it once and you don't do it over and over and over if you don't have to. So.
I guess I would have the concern that we'd end up with a big hole in the ground without money to finish the project. Then what?
Well, there's multiple ways that we can go about it. But did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to say, the $1 million will cover the excavation process. And then from the ground up, we have talked to several contractors who are willing to do ground up work in kind and buildings and things like that in kind. But the $1 million would get the ground so it's feasible for us to move forward. And then from there on, as soon as the dirt gets turned, the fundraising process becomes just immensely easier.
And a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit of what's been a little bit of an obstacle too is that nothing's happened out there since 2011 when they decided to buy it. There's been nothing happen, but it's been farmed. And I think if you don't see anything happen, you're not going to you hold back. It's a very good question. I've done things as far as projects where obviously we're not going to have all the cash in hand, but if we can generate, first of all, if I could get another 2 million, $1.5 million to 2 million right now, and Vision I was going to kick in $1 million right there, I'm up to close to $4 million there, and then then it's just a matter of with all the prospects we have, and you stretch those out and you start putting them into place.
Didn't you say you weren't eligible, we wouldn't be eligible for the Vision Iowa grant until
we have half of the goal amount. $1.5 million's already been spent right now. Already been put into the project right now.
So what is
we'd
half
have to
of the
raise
gr-
probably 2 million. We'd get to about 3.5 million. We'd get there. I know the project, our goal is 8 million, but I have talked to them about the fact that of what Neil had done. They like to see you have raised at least 50% of it.
Considering the state of the budget for the state of Iowa, there's no guarantee that $1 million is there.
No, if you haven't got it, there's no guarantee. The faster you can get it, you know you're going to get it.
So, that's probably more of an assumption or a
Well,
wish than-
everything that I've ever done for 25 years, Dean, it is based on an assumption and it's based on my experience, but,
I have a question.
yeah.
Another question, Terry. How many dollars were raised by the associations, the Fair Board and the Ball Diamonds, before you came on board?
Probably 2/3 of that amount they had raised. Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, if you're going to measure my efficiency based on how much I've raised, the problem is, and the obstacle is, why I don't understand why we can't get any of the larger gifts. I wasn't able to do a feasibility study. They didn't have the finances to do that. I'm basing my information that I'm dealing off of what was done 4 years ago by another company, so.
Possible.
Go ahead, Adam.
Well, my question was, you said there's 1.5 million that's been invested so far, and you have a total price tag of 8 million. Is that
Upwards of, that's our goal amount, yeah.
Is that 1.5 kind of included in that 8 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
And does that include the land? So that,
That's what the 1.5 million
Yeah.
is.
The
The purchase
Vision
we made
Iowa
as a
lets
city
you-
for 1.5 million.
Vision
That's what it
Iowa
is.
lets you
Okay.
include the cost of land acquisition in the cost of a project.
But
Some don't.
your goal of an $8 million fundraise, is that, I suppose, is that 1.5 million that we've spent included in that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said that $1.5 million has been invested in Champions Ridge to date, and that's been based on what our group had raised, that basically has been most of it to get the construction documents necessary to move ahead, and the cost of buying the land from Mr. Smith. Yes. Yep.
Adam, you had a comment or question?
Oh, yeah. Does this all have to happen at once? Meaning, can the baseball commission get started without the fair, or vice versa? Or the campground be left out?
I mean, that's a really good question. The fair has to do something real quick because they can't occupy their fairgrounds and after a certain date. And so I think, can it? The way that it was set up was that both of them would go together, which would, the dirt that's on top of the hill could all go down here and help landscape the fair and make room for the diamonds, and they wouldn't have to haul their way. If they don't do them together, it's probably going to increase one of the other's cost of excavating and getting the site prepared.
So if you took a,
Oh, yeah, I need to get up here. I'm sorry.
I can hear you.
No, but everybody else can't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did you want something, Greg?
Could you?
Greg wanted to add
Sure.
something here.
Get right up to the mic, Greg.
As far as excavation, logistically and economically, it makes sense to do both projects at the same time, like Terry said. As far as the 8 million goes, that is a total project level. So we're talking, this is a 3-phase project, so over the course of 3 phases, we're at the 8 million. So to be functional, the ball groups would be functional with, probably closer to 2 million after the ground is level. So we would have fencing, lighting, and things like that to go into that. Now, of that 2 million, not all that needs to be cash because, like I said before, there's a lot of in-kinds and reduced costs as far as products needed.
So is the ball diamonds, are they part of phase one?
Yes, the first 4 diamonds, which is the first quad, is part of the phase 1, yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments from the council? There's a,
I guess my question / comment comes along the lines of, the council has, of that 1.5, we've put in.
All of it.
Is all of it?
1.5 million. We have spent 1.5 million on the
Okay.
property.
Okay, but what I did was took back out some of what the, because I didn't have exactly everything that you had done, but I took back out some of that had been paid back. It's probably closer to 2 million, but we've also paid and spent
What the fair has paid
a
back.
majority of the money for these construction to get all this stuff from these architects, which has been very expensive too.
And I remember last year, part of the comments about the 1-year deadline and putting the $1 million price tag on it was, some of that was to be that nudge to kind of say, this is our drop dead point, or our this is, we need some incentive to get people to
I
bite.
understand, Tim. And the people that I've, is it Tom, did I say?
No, it's Tim.
Yeah,
But-
but I understand that, and then I have told them, I need a deadline and some sense of urgency, and I have explained that.
Well, and so that gets back to my question. I'm kind of with Dan. I'm not ready to pull the plug on it and say we're going to move on to something else. I mean, we've spent the money. It's been bonded. It's been paying.
Paying debt off with it,
We've we raised the levy for it to cover it. So it's in pipeline as far as that. So there's not necessarily a rush to get it back. There's not much that we can do to get it back other than move on to another project, which there's nothing in the works right now. Right. But I don't know of another deadline or another, I don't want to keep drawing lines in the sand and backing up in lines.
No, we don't want to keep kicking the can down the
can't get
road
in
either.
that. So it's really hard from a, steward of the people's money to say, I believe in this project. I want this to be successful. I see the potential for it to be a boon to the whole community. Both the fair, which has always been a nice boon with the community, but the ball diamonds and having that incentive as well, and then allowing the city to be able to make use of the land downtown that we have and do something for the community there as well. So there's multi-phases to it. So that's kind of the question. What do you need from us to try to stop kicking the can?
I
to
understand.
Try to.
I understand. I've already, a deadline in this particular case, I was able to come up with a couple other league gift prospects, what didn't happen until later in the fall. And then again, like I said, wasn't able to put it together yet, but that's not out of question.
Tim, I think, and Dan, I don't know the answer to your question either, but it just seems to me that if we continue to delay, or continue to entertain this without more significant, and I'm sorry, because I love the project too, it looks like it could be a great project. But if, and it's been more than since 2011, I think this started way before that even.
No, I said
and-
it, but I think, Edith, what I
Yeah.
alluded to in 2011 is that was when they made the agreement with Neil.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my
Get the
point is
land
just that
purchase
we've been
right.
talking, the city, the community has been talking about this project for much longer than that.
Oh, yes.
And if we're, if we're not able to gain enough traction to show evidence, some evidence that it can be completed, then what we're doing by kicking the can down the road is not being strategic in $1.5 million worth of land that we have in planning for the city's future. Now, if we don't have any better ideas, if we, that's a different story, then there wouldn't be any problem with that. But if what we're doing is saying, okay, we're just going to not do anything here now, and have bonded for this money, and we're not going to, in our strategic planning and in our budgeting, we're not going to, well, I hope we don't spend any more, but even at that, we have this and we don't entertain what can be done with it to contribute to the economy of the city and the benefit of the citizens. That's an opportunity loss as well.
I agree. And I guess I look at it from the standpoint of, I look at this project, there's nothing like it that I've ever seen. And I've done projects where I've raised $2-3 million for things that weren't anything like this. But I don't know if there's not a sense of urgency or what the deal is. But, the fair has to do something one way or the other. Mm-hmm. And I don't, I speak for them as far as what I've done for them. I can't speak for their thoughts. But, I mean, when I looked at this in the beginning, the population center of the county is here. I thought, well, the ball is all the Waverly Shell Rock project. The fair is part. I looked in my own mind's eye that about 2/3 of the money would probably come from Waverly and this school district. Maybe another third of it the other third would come from outside in the county. And I've gotten gifts from outside the county. I'm not at liberty to say who they came from, but I've got some nice gifts from outside the county that I haven't been able to generate here. I want people, people know that they can tell where that money goes. If you have an issue with the ball and you want it to go to the fair, all you gotta do is tell us, it all goes there. We have to be stewards of their money.
I guess to Edie's point, when I read the resolution that was put in place with the December 31st deadline, as I look at the first whereas on the back page, it says that if necessary fundraising goal has not been met by December 31st, 2017, or an updated operational business plan does not demonstrate the financial commitment necessary to complete phase 1 of the project in 2018, the project shall be considered terminated. My initial comments were, I am not ready to say it's terminated, but I am saying that we, as a council, should hold ourselves to the last part of that sentence where it says, and the city may proceed to repurpose or dispose of the acquired property.
That's right.
To Edie's point, I think we owe the citizens a relook at this, but I don't want to send the message tonight from me that I consider the project dead.
No. And this is
Certainly
totally up to you.
installed.
I knew the rules going into this when we started. I knew full what the rules were. And I'm not asking you to change the rules. But there has to be, just the fact that I know that the city's all on board for this. If I know that the city and all the employees are all behind what we're doing, that makes a heck of a difference. If I know, if in your talks and you talk about things, if you say they got so long to do it, we don't want to miss this opportunity. You've already put in $1 million. You've already put in $1.5 million. You've been the leaders in this deal. And it's all about leadership. You guys are the leaders. If you can help lead other people to say, we don't want to let this slip away. I'm not at the end of the road, but I'm at the end of my time. And we would have been here on the 8th if Fred or I been here, and I'm sorry, I apologize for that. But I drew the short straw, so I got to come tonight, so, okay.
I just want to say that I think no one wants to be be seen as being opposed to recreation for kids or a healthy county fair. But the project, it seems, despite everyone's best efforts, lacks momentum.
Well,
And if a capital fund drive does not have momentum, you end up stalled, and it seems like that's where you are.
well,
And I think that because we are stewards of the city's money and property, one thing that happens when you have a project like this out there that seems to be going on and on without gaining momentum is it's very difficult then to talk about alternatives. Are there other options for ball diamonds, other options for a location for the fair that are more feasible? And it's very difficult, I think, to do that because people, want to respect the process and give a chance for the fundraising to work, and no one wants to be seen as in opposition to what's a very good idea. But at some point, you have to fish or cut bait. And I think that's what we as a council are going to have to do.
that's why we're here to report to you where we are,
And I
honestly.
appreciate you coming and
Honestly, and as
doing that.
honest as I can be. I'm not going to make artificial dreams. I have prospects, but they're, a prospect's just a suspect until you get them to say yes. And all I can do is keep working at it, but, and it can change overnight. But you, the city, the Board of Supervisors, the City Council, are really the leaders that have taken the lead in this because you've invested the money to make it happen. And the leaders in this, if you leaders can be leaders out and about to say this needs to happen, maybe that'll help. I don't know, maybe you have. And if you have, I'm sorry. But,
Well, if I can make a comment, Greg, in spite of your position with the ball diamond ball people, the word around town that I hear is that no one knows how those, quote, kids are going to get out there to play ball. There seems to be some confusion as to whether those diamonds are for the youth or it's driven by adult softball leagues and things. So there's some confusion.
I'll let the chairman here address that.
Travis Nuss, the president of the 501c3 and
Okay.
Waverly Softball Association. I can tell you those are the two biggest fallacies of this whole project. And no matter how many times we come and say it, they have to stop. Number one, the adults have bent over backwards and even saying, we'll stay at the city park as long as we need to stay at the city park to get this going so that the youth can use this project.
Okay.
The other, how are the kids going to get there? We have 412 3-year-olds through second graders last year that played in our system, and every one of them played in Shell Rock. Not one parent complained that they played in Shell Rock. There's no issue getting out there. 2 years ago, I removed the bike racks from our current ball diamonds. I have not had one person ask me what happened to the bike racks. Kids are driven to sports, and they don't care if they have to drive downtown or to Champions Ridge or to Shell Rock, but those are the two biggest fallacies of this whole project.
Thank you for clarification.
And furthermore, there is, in the plans, there is a bike, the city's bike trail goes right there.
Yeah.
It's in the plans. So those that want to ride the bike can come out of the residential area, cross Kunis property, and they're there. So, yeah. But that's I'm glad you brought that up.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
I would just like to echo what Ann had to say about the possibility that we have a stalled project here. Setting the deadline at the end of the year was actually intended to create a sense of urgency. It doesn't seem as though the urgency is there. My question is, if we set another deadline, would that make any difference? Would it make it any more urgent? And I guess I'm not really sure that I can see that it would. That's my concern.
And I just want to add my 2 cents worth in here because I don't disagree with anything that anyone has said here. I think we're all pretty much unanimously feeling that this is a project that we'd really like to see succeed, but we have to see some proof that this is actually going to succeed. And
I agree.
and that's our hesitation.
I don't blame you. If I was sitting in your chairs, I'd be asking the same thing. I'm just explaining, like I did tonight, explain to you what the obstacles were, explain to you where we're at right now, and it's in your hands. That's all I can say.
Well, Terry, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't tell you that we appreciate the efforts that you have made, disappointed as you may
There's
be.
one other thing I want to make too, and if this is something that's keeping people from giving, when I started down here, I set my fee over $150,000 less than what the last company bid to do it. I divided my fee in half. I had them nail them to the wall over there, and half of my fee's nailed to that wall. I split that rest of my fee up over 2 years, so much a month. If I don't get to that, I don't get it. If they stop today, they can get rid of me in 30 days. There's no consultant that would work for what I'm working for. I haven't billed either one of these groups for the last 3 months because cash flow wise, I don't want them to have to borrow any money because we're solvent. This isn't about the money for me. This is about trying to give something back to Waverly, where I went to college. My second hometown. By God, I'm going to give it everything I got to make this happen. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'll be damned if my only failure is going to be in the town that I love, Waverly, Iowa. Thank you for letting me come tonight. I get a little passionate about this, but I'll tell you what. I've been over backwards, and I know there's some people out there that can, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to come tonight and speak. Thank you.
James, do you have some comments or questions?
Just have a request. Can we get a copy of the financial statement, Terry? I know you've raised $426,000. Do you know how much of that is left? Or has it all been spent on plans and et cetera? Okay, so you're still needing the $1 million to do the earthwork is what you're saying, but you really have $115,000 actually to go towards that. See how there's been taken care of in plans, et cetera? Okay. Can we get a copy of a financial statement? I mean, we've got $1.5 million into this. I just want to, for our own dexterity, make sure we look at that. And then when the plans are final, if we could just get a copy of the plans as well so we can see the changes, that'd be helpful. All right, appreciate it.
Okay. We're not going to take any action tonight, but thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, for your presentation, and we'll deal with it a little bit later. Item number 3 on the agenda is discussion of rules of procedure and ethical conduct code. It's been brought up. I think you all received copies of what was proposed in 2014 and acted upon, rejected in 2017, if I remember right, that it was brought up and
No action was taken.
no
Yes, sir.
action was taken. And
Well, let me just say, looking over the material that you sent out, I do like what the city of Nevada has. I think it is much clearer and much more to the point. There may be some language in there in particular that could be wordsmithed, but I don't think it's all that necessary. I think that the major thing that we need to know isn't, none of us here are experts on Robert's Rules of Order, and I really don't think that that's necessary. All we need to do is make sure that we have some kind of procedure involved so that, you know, the meetings are organized, they run smoothly, and everybody knows what their roles are, what they can do, what they can't do. And the same way with the ethical rules that were in there. I said before that I thought they were somewhat overreaching. I like the ones that they have in the city of Nevada because they're very short, to the point, more aspirational. And, you know, I think as far as this council is concerned, having those kinds of outlines of rules is really more important than trying to have a code of ethics where you violate the code, there are certain sanctions that are going to happen. I think that if, and clearly, it's difficult to sanction someone in a body like this when you're sanctioning a colleague, and I don't think that would happen, frankly.
Right.
So I think having the kind of aspirational things that they had in the city of Nevada makes a lot more sense to me.
Okay.
I guess to me, it depends on, are we creating a code of ethics for our council or future councils? And if a council won't vote on a code of ethics, do we have an obligation to put one in place for future councils who won't vote on one? That's my,
Well,
You
I
know.
mean, every council sets its own rules. And, the rules that we would set would,
sounds like, not all.
well, whatever rules we would set as this body really wouldn't bind the next council sitting in these chairs.
Would not bind?
Would not bind it, because every council that is constituted sets their own rules. I mean, they could just simply adopt the rules that have been in place before. They could just elect not to have any rules, which is what has kind of been happening in the past. So we can set these rules. These rules would really only be in place just for this council, but
2 years till the next election?
till the
or-
next election, right?
I
But
guess
Is that,
that's one comment that I've got is, when I read the Nevada, it reads more as our city code, which if I'm correct, to change a city code, it has to go through a public hearing, three votes. To me, that makes it more longstanding. If it's just something that we can vote on and either put in play or take out of play, I would agree it probably has less value for the next council. So I'm thinking, as we look at this, there are some things that we would hope all councils would adopt, follow, that need to put in the city code. When meetings are, how often you need to attend, some of those things, what a quorum is. But then procedural rules, how does the agenda get put together? How does a council person get something on the agenda? To me, those could be in a document that could be changed every time the council turns over. But I would hope we would look at some of the more, the things that would ensure all councils have an opportunity to be successful would be in the city code.
Where would you put then, Dan, or anybody, if going along Dan's guidelines, where then would you put the sections that have to do with, under some of the additional considerations, willful misconduct, neglect of office?
Well,
Where would those go?
In our city code, it actually, section 10.6 provides that the council shall determine by resolution the rules of its own proceedings. That's in our city code.
Proceedings.
Right.
Is proceedings defined?
It does not, it says, "The council shall determine by resolution the rules of its own proceedings which are not in the Code of Iowa. The clerk shall keep such rules on file for public inspection." The way I read that is that's a general resolution that we can adopt to basically say, how do we want to operate? How do we want to function? And as Rod was saying, I think that's something that would be adopted then at each new council after each election. So every 2 years, the council could look at that and say, this is working, this is not working, we like this, we don't like this, if they want to change it, and then adopt that by resolution to move forward.
so what got in the way the last time? I mean, have you gone through this every 2 years?
No.
We had not, we had operated, and again, when I got on 8 years ago, I think a lot of things operated on a general, kind of informal set of proceedings that we went by. I think having Ike as mayor for as long as he did, he was here, and Richard Crane as for as long as he was here, that there was kind of a flow that had been established there. And there hadn't been a big move to formalize or to codify anything in there. as things kind of evolved over Mayor Brunkhorst's term, and then going forward with a new city administrator, there was kind of a discussion of maybe do we want to have something more formal? Do we want to have some places? And so there were options that were kind of brought forth with the idea that we would discuss these and kind of pick and choose what did we like, what did we did not like. But there was some hesitancy to move forward with a formalized type of thing, and it was kind of more of a, let's continue with the informal, and it didn't take hold to say, let's do formalized. There was kind of some picking, choosing, but there just wasn't a whole consensus to move forward with formalizing it.
There certainly wasn't consensus, and it was one of the first things I was faced with my first term coming on in January, where the city administrator and the mayor put on an agenda, or it appeared on an agenda, and it appeared to come from them, 2 documents, I think the 2 that we see here. And it quickly became apparent that 3 council members had absolutely no interest in talking about that. And so I think it was at a study session also. I don't think it was at a regular meeting for it to be voted on. And I don't know how many of us were new at that point. But anyway, there were 3 who were opposed, and then after that, I guess it never appeared again. It was never discussed again, and it never appeared on the agenda again. So whatever happened in that discussion where the opposition to it was voiced, and we really didn't discuss it at all, that was the end of it.
And that was both parts, the rules of procedure and the ethical?
Correct, yep.
Okay, this is my history, my perception. I think the 2 documents were brought forward because there was a sense that we were stepping out of the norm as a council, and it wasn't being productive. So this was an attempt to say, can we get back to a common understanding of what our roles are, how we're going to interact, how we can make sure everybody's voice is heard. And because that was seen as deterring some voices, it just never got any traction. It was more painful to try to put rules in place than to live with the out of norm that we were dealing with.
Again, it was the 2 documents here from previous, they weren't presented as this is what we were adopting. They were presented as these are some ideas, frameworks, similar to looking at the Nevada rules. It's the same thing kind of thing. Look at what is it we like of that, what do we not like, and then go through. And again, some of the history there has been a couple of attempts since then that were to put parts of these in place. And I know I resisted some of that simply because if we weren't going to do all of it, I didn't want to do piecemeal here or there just because somebody wanted one piece in. I wanted to have a more comprehensive, if we're going to do it, let's have a whole document that talks about lots of things. And keeps a general framework, not to try to tie our hands too much, but to just kind of.
I think this came about partly because of what happened in the previous council, or with the previous council. And I guess the first question for you as council people is, do we need to pursue this?
I think absolutely.
I think so.
I'm not as concerned about the ethical portion of this as maybe it would have been in the past, but I think having a set of procedures that we say we're going to follow at the beginning of the council is incredibly important. And I understand Dan's comments that a number of these things are addressed in the city code, but even those things, and I know we can't change them unless we pass an ordinance, which I don't think is necessary, but simply pulling those things out of the city code, putting them in here is incredibly helpful for people like me or the general public that then know what some of the rules are that we have to follow in the city code. And other things, for example, and I'm just picking this out as an example, but I think it's a very good one, is telephonic participation, electronic participation, which is something that I'm not sure is addressed in the city code. Is it?
It is.
Okay. So,
But not clearly, I would say.
It says you can participate in discussion, but you cannot vote.
Well, but this goes even farther in here because they say the absent member is not counted as present for purposes of determining quorum.
It's the same thing in our code.
Okay,
Code says that.
good.
But this one, the Nevada one actually had, or Nevada, I'm in Iowa, I should get it correctly here. Nevada code actually allows them to vote, which our code does not. And I think my experience with people with that phone participation, it gets very disjointed. And while I like the opportunity, and certainly we had the opportunity either to look in on, because newspapers are now Facebook Living it with us, but then the broadcast, so there's a couple ways that when I've been away at meetings or whatnot, that I've been able to tune in and see what's going on, not necessarily to phone in. So to me, yeah, I agree. The phone one is one that I would like to look at on there. There was certainly one talking about attendance and that I like in some instances, and the other instances, kind of excused and unexcused absences. I'm not quite sure where the line gets drawn on what is excused and what is unexcused on that, or how that gets determined. So that's, there are parts in here that I really like. There's others there. So, yeah, I think would be, it's not an ordinance that we would have to adopt, it would be a resolution, and it would be a voice vote at the, kind of when we start to do some of those formalities, the first meeting in January. Or roll call on resolution, resolution.
Well, I do know that the document that was here before on rules and procedures, that's a compilation of some other communities.
Yep.
Because I ran across the paperwork in the office and things, but
Mayor, I'm wondering if a way to move this forward, if we decide that it's worth the time, is to have a subcommittee. 3 or 4 of us work on it, and those that will all give input and say, I think this should be part of our procedures, this should be part of the city code. Let 2 or 3 people sift through that and come back with a recommendation.
Do we have a procedure for establishing? No.
Yes,
I mean, I think
our
that's a
city
good
code
idea.
does say that we can have subcommittees.
I think that's a good idea, because I agree. I feel like we need to put all these side by side with the city code and look at them, and because I agree with Rod, I think it's really helpful for me to read these, because it sort of helps me know the rules of how I'm supposed to be interacting with constituents, interacting with all of you. Plus, I think you need to have rules and leverage, and what happens if someone has a lot of absenteeism, and how, the whole, I agree with Tim, the whole what's an excused absence and what is not. And I have trouble with phone participation. I think it's very disjointed, and I hope that everybody makes their best effort to get here. But if you're not here, you're not here. That's sort of my opinion. But,
Well-
so I think a subcommittee would be a great idea, because I feel like it needs to be dissected and worked more than we can do at a meeting.
well, I'm glad you've suggested a subcommittee or a committee of the council, because that's been in the back of my mind, that the way to resolve this. So do I can we get by with 4 and not constitute? Gotta be 3, okay. 3 that would.
It could be 3 plus the mayor.
Yes.
I mean, not to try to drag you into the work, but
How about the mayor pro tem?
I think that would make us supposed.
Becomes a voting member.
Yeah, sorry, I would be happy to if I fit the definition, but, yeah.
And I'm sure we'll need James and Bill's input
Yeah.
on legally where things fit. And
The only, I guess, comment I would have is somehow you'll have to be able to incorporate everyone's thoughts into this without having a kind of a quorum type an issue.
Yeah.
And so if possible, maybe you can send your preference to Bill and myself. We can compile everybody's comments to present to a subcommittee of 3, so you're not then mixing that line that we do not want to mix. And that way, you're not having to interact amongst each other this way. So if there are things that you do like in here, don't like in here, want to accomplish, don't want to accomplish, if you can forward that on to us, we can at least compile what that looks like, so that whoever is lucky enough to sit on this committee and bring this back, you would have a good baseline to start with versus trying to do it amongst yourselves, which could get a little dicey.
Which section of city code deals with this?
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10.
Chapter 10.
City Council.
No,
There
I
may be
think,
pieces you want to put in the code, there may be code pieces you want to add to this, but either way, as long as you find some way to do this, that's just
no,
fine.
I think
That's a good
that was my other thought, that everybody go through and highlight or make comments and get it to,
Yep, we'll compile it and at least give you a starting point
yep,
to.
and then somebody can put it all together and,
Are you starting with the Nevada draft as far as, I mean, because it's almost easier to start with one and then kind of add.
I think that
Subtract.
the consensus I see is that is a good starting point.
Keep in mind, one thing about that is that it incorporates things that are covered by Iowa law. It incorporates things that are covered by ordinance. And it doesn't always, it sets rules like how many you can miss or how many you can do that. But the Iowa code just basically says if you have certain general things that you do, you can be removed and they can contest that. So you're setting rules that may not be supported by a judge looking at that if you were to try to enforce the. So, I mean, there's aspirational parts of this that I saw that I really think, it really is kind of aspirational when you talk about ethics. The code of ethics about how you should act. But whether if you violated that, you'd be able to be removed or something, that's a different issue. It's just kind of giving you kind of a good guide. So I think there's a lot of good things here. But then the more practical aspects, I think, are things that are probably fairly easy to do, which is, what does it take to bring something back? What does it take to put something on the agenda? Or those are pretty personal to this group as opposed to what's in the law. So those are the kind of issues when you're looking at it and making comments that would be helpful for us
And I think
when we're
if there's
drafting.
any legal issue or anything that's already covered in Iowa code, we can certainly point that out.
Right.
And let you know this is what the code states itself. So make sure we're not duplicating, or as Bill pointed out, which is a good point, we're creating something we can't possibly enforce. And that's the last thing we'd want to do is do that. And there is a little bit of that in there, that it's kind of on a gentleman's agreement that I'll abide if this happens. Legally, we probably couldn't enforce some of that, and that does get to be an issue. So if we get through this and see the compilation of what you're wanting to do, then we can point out, again, Iowa sections, codes that are already existent or piece of the ordinance so we don't overlap. And I think at some point, it will come together to be a good set of rules and procedures that you can adopt.
And I think it would be helpful.
One section of the code that was one thing that I kind of have had the experience now of being on several different times where we've had a council vacancy, and kind of one of the ones that I've always been uncomfortable is a council member picking a new representative for a ward. But you look in Iowa code, and there really are only the two options. We have pretty much a council appoints, or we have a special election. It isn't something where I kind of envisioned maybe having the mayor nominate somebody and have the council then approve it, kind of like they do at the national level for when a senator is vacant, that the governor can appoint us, something like that. But that isn't allowed under Iowa code, so that's something that, as much as I would like to do something different.
And I think it would be helpful in there when it says Iowa code says this, if you could give us that sentence of the Iowa code. Because, I mean, I don't need the whole legal, but something, because.
And I can put this in an email too, but I think what would be helpful is when we put this together as a guide, that somehow, I don't know if we could color code it or highlight it or something, but the things that are required by Iowa code, if that was identified as Iowa code, so we know that can't be changed. The things that are from the city code, if we could identify that as city code, so we know that, if we have to change that, or we want to change that, we're going to have to pass an ordinance to change it. And then everything else is just basically by resolution. So, on the board, that we know this is what's required by a state code, this is in the city code, and this is just what we're setting for ourselves. And I'm just doing this basically as a new member, because having that all in one place where I can see, okay, what's the quorum, what are the rules on, setting an agenda, what are the rules on roll call votes, and who can call something back if they want to reconsider. Just having that in one place is incredibly helpful.
And just the idea of saying you have to have 4 votes no matter what.
Yep.
I mean, that was one thing we had to have a discussion about, and that was right in the code, the Iowa code. So you can just cite that when you put it in something, you can actually cite the Iowa code that it comes from.
So are we are we talking about a single document of ethics and procedure? We're talking about two things like we were talking about before tonight? Where are we going with that?
I think it's nice to have it all in one, sort of, that was,
They've got, there's ethics.
The Nevada one incorporates both of them, and
Put 'em all together.
that's one of the things that appealed to me, but.
I thought their code was very aspirational too, and it actually worked well that way. Because it just suggested these are appropriate ways to handle
I
things.
think people want that.
Yeah.
You know, the constituents want that. They don't want squabbles and disrespect, and they want rules.
One, it provided ideas that you will have to manage yourself, but at least it gives you options what you could do, but you still would have to decide in the end. I
Right.
don't think you can make it so black and white that you don't need to think about it. It's just not that possible with the way the code's written.
I didn't feel like it was stifling,
No.
you know.
Do we know if the Nevada document is part of their city code or just?
It's a resolution.
I don't
By
think it's a
resolution.
code.
It shows at the beginning that it's been amended 3 times
Yep, different resolutions, different
Since
years.
when?
since 2008. I think it was. the original.
2015 is the latest amendment, it looks like, 15, 16.
2009, 2010, and 2015.
Correct.
And I tried to look on the League of Cities website for other documents or other, I was putting in search, I couldn't find anything.
They give you this one sometimes.
Do they?
If you ask
Okay.
them.
Yeah, I
for it.
couldn't find anything on
They suggest this
absenteeism or
one.
ethics or,
But they also suggest others. I've probably read 3 or 4, or 5 other ones.
Okay.
And they're fairly similar. Most of them have more process. This one actually has a whole chapter on what Iowa law is on other things, like the use of public funds or the open meetings or closed sessions. It basically is quoting and including in there what the Iowa code says, so that you don't have to go to the Iowa code to look
Yeah.
at it.
That's good.
So it's not a bad thing to have.
that's nice.
So is just the subgroup that we're going to identify going to be sharing their feedback with you, or all of us?
Everybody.
And then you'll work with the subgroup
You'll
to?
feed it back
Or the
to the-
subgroup to start with.
Okay,
And
got it.
start with a draft.
Start with a draft and get your comments, just take a copy and highlight or make
Okay.
notes on it and get it to James or Bill, and
Is there any way you can get us an electronic copy that we can edit electronically and track the changes?
Carla says yes.
You can convert to PDF.
Okay, yeah, or a PDF one that you can.
We
Yep,
could,
yep,
we could convert it.
yep.
I'm old school, I was going to ask for it.
You will.
I like to write on it.
Well, yeah, so, well, I'll
We can
just
send
say,
it in a Word
I'm happy with an electronic one as you send.
I think
If you would send me
We can do a
one,
Word document.
if you get me a PDF.
If I'm going to play with it, I have to have a Word document anyway, so somebody's going to have to do it for me.
Okay, any other discussion? I think we've covered that pretty well, and I like the direction that it's going. So, reports from boards and commissions?
Do you want volunteers for a committee, or are you going to?
Let's wait till we get enough to get a draft in, I think.
Okay.
Comments?
Yeah, we can, and see what,
Okay.
You can also indicate your willingness to us, if you don't want to talk about it here, to be on a subcommittee. Won't put you on the spot.
Everybody take a step forward.
However you want to do it, that's just fine.
Well, another way to do it, I mean, if there is a fair amount of overlap in what we're saying, if, there were, and that's easy for you to work with in pulling together a draft, then we could just come back at another study session and discuss that draft
It's true.
here.
Yeah,
That's true.
that might work.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll see how concise and compiled you are at the end of this, and then we'll make that decision.
okay?
Kind of sobering, I think, to see that the city of Nevada had adopted their resolution in '09, and they're already amending it in 2010.
Yeah,
I would think anything new.
Social
you may find
media.
something doesn't work right away. and,
Social media rules, yeah.
It didn't take too long to figure it out, yeah.
We adopted the Constitution for the United States and quickly amended it 10 times.
Yeah, well, there were some reasons for that.
There was a reason for that, but it happened very quickly.
It's a very noble comparison. I like that.
Yeah,
Not
this
sure
is
it's got
almost
the
the
same
same
levity,
thing.
but I'll take that.
Aspirational.
I'll take that
Being
with it.
aspirational.
The drafts they
Except
were,
it
I
was
never
just
get
men.
History teacher in the
It's only men that did that.
sort of.
okay, let's move on. Reports from boards and commission. The Airport Commission minutes.
The one kind of thing I would highlight in that, and it was in the Public Works newsletter also, was the kind of the discussion from Mark Mueller on the cover crops and kind of that new trend as we talk about water quality and other things, cover crops that are going out there, and the use of local regional airports to
apply
use
them.
those to apply it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Library Board of Trustee minutes from November 14th. Received. Library Board of Trustee minutes from December 12th, 2017. Received. Economic Development Commission minutes, December 12th, 2017. Any?
I guess one noteworthy comment that was in there, we had a discussion on just mortgage activity and single-family homes. I think this summer we peaked at over 110 units on the market. The realtors, the folks, the bankers in the group were saying it's back to more historic levels of 50 to 60 units. So what appeared to be a lot of people selling their homes and leaving Waverly hasn't necessarily turned out that way. We're back to the normal where there's good turnover. And again, when you look at Eisenach Village, other places, some of the new rental property, the majority of those are new to the area, coming into the community, that type of thing. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on reports from the boards and commissions? If not, entertain staff comments.
Hi there.
Mr. Ray?
This weekend, the Saturday night, is scheduled for the annual Candlelight Ski event. Be it rest assured, if the weather holds the way it is, we will have 400 to 500 luminaires out there, and it'll be a candlelight walk. Unfortunately, for Crawdaddy Outdoors, they won't be renting any skis or snowshoes. But it's from 5 to 7. It doesn't cost anything. We'll have 5 to 10 gallons of hot cocoa at the end and some treats and a bonfire, and everybody's welcome to come out.
Where does that commence at?
It starts at the Trailhead Shelter behind Quickstar West,
Okay.
or Quickstar East, and then walks about 1.1 miles out.
Okay. Thank you. Any other staff comments?
Just a brief one. As you know, we'll be heading into Budget Saturday. Everybody's really excited about it. I'm really not right now, but we'll make it work. It's solvable. And we'll be having breakfast 7:30, so we'll get you going here by 8. I know there's a lot of discussion about going more of a full day on Saturday, which I think is a good idea to get through as much as we can because we have a lot we're going to have to cover and some difficult decisions ahead of us. That being the case, we usually haven't gone far enough to have a lunch or something like that. And so the question would be, do you want lunch brought in for that as we've done breakfast, or do you want to disperse amongst yourself and come back, assuming you come back? Do you have a preference? Do you have a
Like a
preference?
lock-in?
Just
Do you lock us
if
in
it needs
until-
to be, just so that we have some idea going into Saturday what we're going to be looking at. I don't know if there was a preference from anyone either way.
Well, if you have a preference that we're here for the second half of the meeting, maybe we should have lunch on site.
It depends on how your first half goes. They may have that preference.
I guess that's my question. Format, is it going to be similar to the past couple of years, or?
Kind of how I see it. We'll change it a little bit. As past years, we would have staff come do a presentation, and you would sit there and look interested, and it was wonderful. And we would talk a little bit. I think, as I all know, you're going to look through your books very diligently. I would almost start each conversation with questions you may have directly in all seriousness, so we're not providing information that maybe isn't what you're really wanting. I'd rather identify what you really want first, and then I've told staff if there are highlights that weren't addressed, that we want to make sure points are made, we would continue after that and then follow up with additional questions if need be. So I think it'll be a little more brief in that aspect if we can get the questions out of the way on each budget initially. But our hope would be to get through pretty much everything the first day, enterprise funds, debt discussion, a little bit of that. And then the next Saturday and the 3rd, be a lot more of a, what are we going to do now that we've seen everything that we've seen?
Is it even thinkable that we would get into some of that on Saturday already?
It's possible, depending on how late you want to be here, we certainly can. We'll be ready with whatever possibilities you're going to want to look at and scenarios and options. And we've been working through a variety of documents to pull a lot of statistics you're going to want to talk about. But we have some serious challenges, and I think we're going to be ready to provide some guidance, but it'll be dependent on how do you want to see it. I don't know if some of you have a certain tax rate I want to see, or a dollar amount, or it's just whatever preference you may have will dictate kind of how that meeting goes. But I do, again, want to start out with any questions you may have per budget. We'll go into a discussion of what it is then, hit the high points, and we'll move on. And we will try to
I don't know how
hit.
others feel, but I'll just say right now that I would, not that I would want a marathon session until nighttime, but I would prefer to stay a good part of the day and get as far as we possibly can.
We have no problem with that, do we, staff?
I'd agree with
Except the candlelight ski starts at 5.
We're ready to go. We have no
That's okay.
problem with
I do
that.
have a commitment in the early afternoon at 3:30, so.
Well,
Oh, well, that's
yeah.
mid to late afternoon, I'd say, isn't it? That's mid-afternoon.
I mean, that was
No.
kind of the reason
3:30?
for my question.
Right.
Oh, that'd
Well,
be
in the
plenty of
past,
time.
the detail the staff has shared has always been good detail, but 4.5 hours of that level of detail was enough for the mind and the rest of the body to absorb.
Right.
So if it's more of an interactive discussion, yeah, I'd be willing to see it extend into early afternoon.
That's how I want it to be, because a lot of the stuff that we get into, we will touch on personnel initially, and that'll be the only time we'll touch on it. There are certain things that affected every budget, certain budgets where the predominant amounts expended are personnel. And then we'll focus on the parts that we actually can control somewhat, some of the operating, the highlights there, and then possible capital issues, things like that. So I do see it moving along a little quicker without diving that deep into the detail. That's pretty self-explanatory unless you have a question, which by all means is why we're here to do that. But we will touch on the high points and do more of a categorical presentation of what some of the bigger issues are at the start that we're facing, and then that'll take care of a lot of the detail as we move forward. We won't have to focus on every budget we go through. You already know going in, a
All
lot of it's going to
capital
be.
equipment would be lumped together regardless if it's parks or street, those type of things.
I think we can do that. Can we combine capital equipment into a single list?
I'm
We'll attempt to do that.
not saying that has to be, but to me,
But I think it's a good thing to categorize just what are we talking about and the quantity we're looking at and what it is and certain funds, and we'll take a look and work on that. Maybe try and do that myself so Jenny doesn't have to do that. She's got enough to do already with it, but.
Splits out because some of those are paid for from different funds.
Correct. So we would list what kind of fund it is, where it's being paid for initially, et cetera. And a lot of that is just, as you look through, I hope it will make sense as you see it and what's in what fund, whether it be road use or local option or the taxable funds, the enterprise funds. It is a lot, but we'll try and get through as high level as we can. And again, not move too fast through it, but yet not dwell on the the detail that we had in the past, maybe, so we can at least get through all of it at one time, let you think through it if need be, and then reconvene on a third with any additional questions that have to be answered, because there is a lot this year to try and take a look at. And as I said, the values did not help us. So it's caused some challenges we wouldn't have had in the last couple of years. But again, it's solvable. We'll figure it out.
Now, after I made that suggestion, I do have to disclose that our daughter's due in Seattle with a baby on Thursday. I'm just assuming it won't be here by Saturday. But if it is, I may have asked for an all-day meeting, and then I might not be here.
okay, item 5, procedure document.
First unexcused absence.
You light the firecracker and run. That's okay. I think we understand, but yes, that's how we'd like to proceed forward, is a little more interactive, a little less, this number's up $1, this number's down $1. Just like to focus categorically a little more on where we are and where we're not, especially at that level. If we're up, why? If we're not, is it substantial? Those kind of thoughts. And I will send an email out to you this week as well, highlighting some of the bigger issues we are going to have to dive into and some of the challenges that we're kind of facing, so you have a little more of a heads up coming in. You can start to look at that.
One issue is we've got the books to look at this week, is the backfill figured into this budget, or is it?
Most of it is, but not all of it, but most of it.
Okay, so we're assuming we're going to get it.
We tried to soften, I'm not assuming anything like that. We tried to soften the blow all we can, and we do have reserves to take that hit if we need to. We just, one, politically don't think we should have to, but
That's the big
two,
one.
we realize we probably will at some point, if not this year. It's just the way it is. I know the initial proposed budget did include it. At the
Did or
state level,
didn't?
did. And that's a good sign, but again, it's a long ways till the end, so we'll see.
I think we shouldn't include it unless we have to.
We have to.
Okay.
I start to throw the other numbers at you as to where we sit
All
and the
right.
rates, and it's, I'd really like to right now. Just as long as we have to, we'd like to keep it.
So to summarize, it appears,
Lunch
I think
in,
consensus is that we'll be here all till at least mid-afternoon or thereabouts.
we won't let you leave, we'll bring lunch in, and we'll figure out what that is, we'll draw straws, flip coins, I don't know, we'll figure something out, but we'll, I'm sorry, do you have a comment here? We'll figure something out along that line, either have a menu for you or something like that, and we'll have something brought in so we can keep moving, maybe through lunch as well, depending on how we're progressing.
Very good.
Excellent.
And
But
any
we are
other,
planning the third also still.
Yeah, we're gonna need a third. I have no question we're gonna need a third.
any other staff comments?
I think we're good, sir. Thank you.
Things are going well, chief? Perfect. Good.
Is your academy full?
Not full yet, so we're still taking applications till the 29th.
Okay.
How full is it so far?
We're close to the numbers, but there's some, like I said,
We do have some applicants. We want to give priority to residents of Waverly and folks that work within Waverly. So that's why we keep the application open until the 29th, and we'll give priority to folks that live and work in Waverly first. But we do have some folks that don't meet that, but are just interested in law enforcement, learn a little bit about our department, that live outside the county or live in the county that don't, maybe retired. So we'll give priority yet to the folks that want to go through it.
Okay, thank you. City council member comments. Brian?
Got nothing.
Rod?
I'm beginning to realize that even though I like Brian and Tim a lot, after 4 council meetings and 2 whole-day budget sessions, I'm going to be sitting next to them a lot longer this month than I have ever sat next to my wife. So, thank you, gentlemen, for being very congenial colleagues.
Do you want to hold my hand?
No, thank you.
Kim?
I'm good.
Edie?
I don't have any comments.
Ann?
I just want to say, since the Vikings are not in the Super Bowl, I have more time now on that weekend, and I will be going to 2 concerts that are in the area. There's a brass concert at the middle school, February 3rd, Septura, which is a big deal. This is a British group that's coming. And then Sunday afternoon before the Super Bowl is the chamber music series at St. Paul's, which I think is a string duet group. So I would commend those to you pre-football.
Dan?
Nothing, thank you.
Mike?
Nothing.
Okay. Adam?
Just thanks again for having me. I don't have a whole lot, and also though really thank all you people for doing what you do, because clearly this is a lot of work and effort, and time and sacrifices with big decisions ahead.
Oh,
So just talking about that budget section, we'll spend the day in a volleyball gym.
It's still January.
Yeah, it's still January.
So, no, it's clearly obvious what you guys do for the community, and we all appreciate it.
Thank you. I'd appreciate your participation in the council this past month, and glad you hopefully you enjoyed your time here anyway, so. I have some comments, and one thing we talked about the rules and procedure and ethics, and I've heard numerous comments on the street, so to speak, about how well the meetings have been this month compared, and so I commend all of you for that. An announcement came out today that Donna Crane, who is the wife of Dick Crane, our former city administrator, after short illness, passed away Saturday afternoon. And there will be a memorial service held February 10th at 4 o'clock? 3 o'clock, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Budget sessions have been talked about, and they are open to the public. So those of you that are interested to hear how your money's going to be spent, come. And we've already talked about the strategic, oh, no, we haven't either. You got a copy of the last strategic plan that council did.
It's in that pocket of your budget.
It's in the copy, it's in the budget binder. And would like you to take a look at that. And I think, Carla, you told me you have some money in the budget for a planning session later this year? Yeah, in the upcoming budget, so. Because I think this council needs to take a look at priorities and projects and things that are coming up. I've had the privilege of attending some of the other boards and commission meetings past 2 or 3 weeks, and I've found out a couple things. I've learned that most of those, or some of those, have not seen a mayor for quite some time, and they appreciate the fact that I show up, and I have learned some things from everyone that I've been to. I was to the hospital board meeting this evening before I came here, and they are quite giddy, so to speak, proud. They just received a 5-star rating for health care out of number 4 of hospitals in Iowa. Waverly is one of the 4 out of 118 hospitals in Waverly. So they're very pleased. And also, they've been averaging about 40 visits per day at the walk-in clinic. And they're trying to figure out how they're going to keep that staffed at those levels.
Yeah.
But so those are basically the comments that I have, and I thank each and every one of you again for your participation, and we'll look forward to the next meeting. Edie, you have guest council person lined up for February?
Oh, I didn't know it was my turn. Or did I know? And I forgot. Okay. I'll have somebody lined up.
Okay.
Could we have that list routed again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll send it out.
The only reason I know is that I have a copy of that taped to my office, to the office wall.
Come look at it more often.
board
Yeah.
that you got?
You sent it to me quite a while ago, and that's why I forgot about it. I
Okay.
think. That's not your fault, that's my fault.
No. I hesitated to bring that up, but I also
That's
wasn't
fine.
sure.
No, I'm glad you
So-
did. We'll have somebody.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, I think one of the reasons the council is functioning so well so far is because of your congenial disposition.
Thank you. I've tried to conduct it in a manner that people will appreciate. And as I said, I've heard numerous comments on the street, and the public is pleased with what's going on. So I don't tell them I can't promise that there'll never be a contentious meeting, but we'll do our best to keep it under control. So with that said, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor, yes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.